We have breaking news right now. President Trump has just given an interview to the New York Post, and here's exactly what he says in part of that interview. We are loading up the ships with the best
Now it is the war again.
ammunition, the best weapons ever made, even better than what we did previously, and we blew them apart. Now, all of this is activity remains constrained in that critical oil ship flow and waterway. The ships are waiting to get in. We've only seen maybe 3 of them with oil in them. Other ships have made it through up to about 11 or 12. But usually we see between 120
This is very bad for whatever is happening because war is not stopping.
and 150 going through the Strait of Hormuz. Countries are perched to see what will happen next. And you heard from President Trump. He's more than perched. He didn't pull anybody out of that region. This is a ceasefire in the war. This is not a complete deal. We know that J.D. Vance, our vice president, is on his way to Islamabad, Pakistan, to go meet with those who will sit at the table and make a deal happen potentially. But President Trump is issuing that stern warning to the regime.
This is what happening. Jerry Vance is on the way to Pakistan, Islamabad, for peace talks with the Iran supreme leaders.
This point. Here's also what he has put up on Truth Social. In part, there are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now! Exclamation point.
Yeah,
However, Iran's
man.
supreme leader is pushing back.
Iran's supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the previous dead supreme leader.
Well, you know, the son, Mujtaba, who nobody's actually ever verified if he's alive and if he's moving around and all that, since his relatives were all killed, including his Ayatollah father. But anyway, he's quoted to have said, "We are entering a new era with the management of the Strait of Hormuz.
This is what he said.
We did not and do not seek war, but we will not give up our rightful rights in any way, and for this we consider all the fronts of resistance as one." You know what he means by that? All the fronts.
Oh,
He's hitting
damn.
his neighbors, so he doesn't have any friends. Meanwhile, Vice President Vance is expressing optimism ahead of tomorrow's talks.
Looking forward to the negotiation. I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see. As the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see.
Joy Jones,
This is what we have. Let's see, outnumbered.
warrior on the couch here. The nature of this war is that we're in a 3-day-old ceasefire that doesn't look very ceasefire-y
Why does this do have the laptop screens on them? I don't know.
on the Iran side.
No, and this probably was expected. I think this more than anything, there's a thing called tyranny of distance when it comes to planning war. And so the further you are away from your resupply, your beans and bullets and all of that, the harder a sustained effort is. And then you start this war, you're ahead of schedule, and then you realize, okay, all these contingencies for resupply, stopping the fuel, those are falling apart because of European countries afraid to be involved. Okay, now we need to reorient our compass and plan for this. I think it was the Ford we've lost already. So some of these.
Yes, this is what we have. We already lost some category of things. 4 oil tankers cross strait since truce. Only 4 oil tankers. Other tankers. Other cruise ships are not oil, but different manufactured or import-export products.
Assets that were there in the buildup are leaving. New troops are coming in. I don't think we've seen the end of the bombing campaign. Hopefully we've seen the end of what we call war. We've seen the end of our folks being in tremendous amount of harm's way. But at the end of the day, I mean, go back as far as you want. It's much easier to defend territory than it is to take it. It's much easier to Vietnam, Afghanistan, just in our lifetime. It's just much easier. It's much harder to eliminate threats in Iran than it would be if Iran.
It is. Eliminate the threat. Eliminate the threat in Iran. This is what I always said. We have to do something better.
We're trying to attack somewhere else. When you have the defensive position, you don't have to expend all your ammo. You don't have to have more people. And so people talk about, oh, they shot down one of our planes. I thought that we had air superiority. Well, we do because they're not flying planes. They're not bombing us. What we don't have is the ability to not know that they can do what the Mujahideen did to the Russians. They took cheap shoulder-fired rockets and took enough MiGs and helicopters down that the Russians said, hey, this costs more money than we want to spend on it. We're going to back on out of here.
That is
This is what really happened right there in Russia. Russia backed his everything because they are losing money while fighting with them.
such a great example, too. And just think of how much kinetic activity had happened in Afghanistan, for instance, before we even got involved.
So much,
right?
so
And they
much,
had
yeah.
faced so much,
Benghazi.
and still we couldn't do it.
There is a Benghazi movie if you have not watched it.
And I think what we're seeing right now is that you can't just military your way to a victory. And we've seen over the last 40 years, you can't just diplomacy your way to a victory. It's up to President Trump and his team to learn how to use those two levers together to get to what they consider a victory. And as was outlined a week into the war, the victory was supposed to be, the goals were destroy their Navy, destroy their Air Force, destroy their ability to produce and fire missiles, and take away their ability to go nuclear. So as far as I'm concerned, those are still the four elements of victory.
Yes. This exactly the four constants we are focusing on. The top priority.
The Strait of Hormuz is not in there.
Not
No, but
now.
it's become something that, Rebecca, obviously Iran knows it can use that leverage because why?
Right.
Why? Because they're right there. Actually, the waterway doesn't belong to them. It's along their country.
No, it's international. It belongs to all of us and belongs to nobody specifically. And so
Yes.
it's intolerable for the United States'
True.
perspective that Iran is going to claim that it can control the Strait of Hormuz. And remember, if Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz, that means China is, because China is the biggest backer and gets 90% of Iranian oil goes to China.
Yes, this is true. China is the main mastermind doing all this from the upside. China is the one.
The other thing I think it's really important, what Joey said is, I think all of this negotiation right now, Vice President Vance going to Pakistan, all he really needs to consider this a success, I think, is to get them to say they're not going to fire into the strait. That's the immediate problem. And I think we're going to then see an international force there escort some
You
oil
think
through
NATO
the
will
strait.
get involved?
I think they're going to see Europe. I think the Europeans are willing to do it if there's not open hostilities. And so they
Yes. If there is no open hostilities, Europe, every country in the Europe, also NATO said we are ready to do. But some of the constraints are there that is stopping NATO and all to not do these things. This is what I have in my mind, and this is what I read from their statements all around.
need to have the confidence that they can do that. And maybe if it's just temporary, get some oil
This is
through
the
there.
Strait of
But we're still
Hormuz.
going to have all these other problems
see-
with this rump regime that exists. And then I think Epic Fury resumes.
The green lines are vessel entering the Persian Gulf westward, and these yellow lines are vessel exiting the Persian Gulf eastward. You see right here, this is Iran, this is UAE border right here, UAE, and this is Oman right here. So Oman and Iran are in the main country accessing the Strait of Hormuz with their power.
In a few weeks, even if we do get some successful, safe travel through the
So,
strait.
but I don't understand, Kaylee, how Europe can sit by and not let us use the airspace and the things that
I am.
U.S. military,
Yes.
should we have to re-engage and just protect the strait so that ships can go through. I mean, but they want to benefit from that protection in the strait. So they might take a part via NATO, and Ruta was just here, and so maybe those conversations are happening, the Secretary General of NATO. But they don't want to support what got us to the point where we could keep them from developing nukes.
It's absolutely absurd, and that's why cameras weren't allowed in that room. Rutte and Trump do get along. Typically, there are cameras there, and we see this.
This is a big, bold expose. Camera is not allowed. This is why.
Relationship, but we didn't see it because a hard conversation took place. And I've been in the room with President Trump as he's met with foreign countries and had those hard conversations. And believe me, they look very differently behind the scenes than they look like in front of the cameras. And that's where he gets his leverage. International diplomacy is messy. It's not going to be a clean process. There's a back and forth that takes place, and an added element when you're dealing with a terrorist regime like Iran that cannot be trusted. But I will say this, the negotiators in the room, I've been there with Jared Kushner. He knows what he's doing. He's whip smart. Steve Witkoff, they are responsible for the hostages being released, the Gaza ceasefire. J.D. Vance is a key voice in this. And ultimately, President Trump, the closer who has solved 8 conflicts. This is a hard problem to solve. It has bedeviled every president over the last 47 years. But I like the odds with this president.
Well, and like Joey said,
All right, just like that, just like that.
they're using the two levers. They've got the diplomacy, and you know we will use our might. So, Emily, one more point about all this is Israel and its continued battle with Lebanon's terrorist army that sits there. And now the Lebanese want to talk about dismantling that army. I don't know if they can, but that's a sticking point. Iran says Hezbollah has
I mean, whatever is happening in Lebanon, not good, not good. They are bombing Lebanon. They are bombing.
to be able to do what it needs to do against Israel. So that's a war, I guess, that just continues.
Well, I think that underscores that different sovereign entities have different mission objectives, and they have different
This is true because they are different over, right?
purposes that they're seeking. If I can just ask you a follow-up real quick. For those that are saying, who are we even negotiating with in Iran or in the Islamic Republic? And secondly, how does that impact all of the proxies that were the source of so much death and destruction? Is it our Gulf allies that we can rely upon to help manage?
Well, I think that this is a great question, Emily. And one of the things that the U.S. destroyed is command and control. It's the ability of the leaders to be able to communicate to the people in the field. And so that is a problem.
Thing. US just destroyed the command and control, the ability to let them check what they are doing in the field, so they cannot.
And President Trump has said as much. But we do need to get whoever is going to be talking to J.D. Vance needs to say, we are going to call off attacks. There will be no attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. But it is a rump regime. We've taken out over 1,000 IRGC and besieged leaders. So we really have taken out the top leadership in the regime. It's really just a rump regime flailing at this point.
Well, look, last hour we heard with a statement directly from the White House during the Faulkner Focus who would be sitting at the table on our side, Witkoff, Kushner, and Vice President Vance. We still, is your point, we don't know who's on the other side of the table. This is breaking just now from
Whoa, damn. This is breaking news. We do not know who is sitting
the
there.
President of the United States on Truth Social. Quote, the Iranians don't seem to realize they have no cards other than a short-term extortion of the world by using international waterways. The only reason they are alive today is to negotiate.
Damn, Donald Trump, you got balls, man. You said these things. Damn, you got balls.
Quick response to that, Kaylee.
Yeah, he's clearly showing that he is willing to use hard power. And that is what makes this president different. You
Damn.
look at Joe Biden before him, soft power. What Iran saw was an unfortunate withdrawal from Afghanistan that was disastrous. What they see when they look at this president is someone who's saying, hard power is not off the table here. I'm willing to use it, and I'm using it for
Yes, Donald Trump is really doing that. Donald is the best for the war situation.
leverage now.
And as you pointed out, we're reinforcing that by pulling out what we need and putting back what we need. So, yeah, we haven't left.
Yeah, I don't see anything saying that we're not going to continue Epic Fury.
Hey, everyone.
Yes, Epic Fury, Operation Epic Fury. This is happening. This is happening.